What's going on, guys? Jeremy here from Focus Flow, and today we're going to be going over something that I feel like hits close to home for a lot of free runners, myself included, and that is the reality that you're not always going to have someone to train with, and therefore you're definitely not always going to have someone who's able to film you. The thing about extreme sports in general is that filming is pretty much ingrained within them. When you and your friends are out training, you pick up a camera or just your phone and you record each other's progression, whether that's for posting on social media or just having the footage for your own benefit. It's a part of the culture itself, and that's just as true for skateboarding as it is for freerunning. However, freerunning is still a relatively new underground sport, and because of that, depending on where you're from, you might be one of the few, if not the only, freerunners in your area. Now, I have been lucky enough to have met some other freerunners through my time in college, but when I'm back home like I am now, I'm the only freerunner that I know of, and because of that, I'm stuck training and often filming by myself. Now, of course, you can always ask friends and family who don't participate in freerunning just to help you film your videos, but there's a big difference between asking someone like that for a favor versus just already being out with your friends training and just picking up a camera and shooting a few clips as you would do for them. Filming takes time after all, and if you're as passionate about freerunning as I am, then you're training no matter what the weather and very consistently throughout the year. So there's just not always going to be a time where someone is available to film you. So today, no more excuses. We're going out, filming by ourselves, and I'm going to be giving you 5 tips that I've learned through my experience on how to make your solo footage more entertaining. Now, with these 5 tips, you're not going to need any fancy gear. You can record on your phone. The only thing you really want to have is some way to hold your camera. So go to Walmart, pick up a $30 photography tripod. That's all you need, and you're good to go. So with that out of the way, let's get to tip number 1. Keyframing. Without a doubt, the most inhibiting factor of not having a filmer is that there is no real camera movement. And having your camera just sit on a tripod filming yourself for hours doesn't always look that appealing. So the first tip in order to make your footage look more lively is to fake that camera movement via keyframing. Keyframing can be done in virtually any editing software, and it's simply designating a start frame and an end frame in order to add an animation to your video. You can do this to fake zoom ins, zoom outs, panning left and right, tilting up and down, and even the roll axis of the camera. If you watch any of my videos closely, then you might realize that I do this in the vast majority of my stationary tripod clips when they're covering action. Even a very slow zoom in adds a lot of character to an otherwise boring shot. And if you want to add a lot of action to your shot, you can even use keyframing to track your subject throughout the clip. Something to keep in mind when it comes to keyframing is the more movement you want to add, the more you're going to have to crop your image. And cropping the image is the same as a digital zoom, so you're just going to lower the resolution of your overall clip. So if you do it too much, you're going to notice a loss of quality in your video. But that being said, keyframing is an amazing tool for taking otherwise boring stationary footage and adding movement to them. And just a quick tip for keyframing, if you want to add the illusion of more movement in your shot, you can add foreground in your shot, which is just having something in between the subject and the camera. So when you add your keyframing, the foreground will appear to move much more and therefore accentuate the movement of the camera, or fake movement. All right, let's talk about tip number 2. Be the filmer. Keyframing is great, but it's no replacement for getting behind the camera and doing real life, actual moving shots yourself. So the question becomes, how am I going to be able to record my free running and be the cameraman at the same time, unless I'm using some sort of weird 360 camera that I just hold on a selfie stick? And the answer is, you're not going to be both. However, getting behind the camera in order to film some B-roll shots will really up the quality of your video. B-roll, quite simply, is supplementary footage used to help tell your story. In the case of freerunning, this can involve shots establishing the scene of where you're training, and they don't have to involve you being in the frame. So because you don't have to be involved in the shots, use that to your advantage. Get behind the camera and do real movements by yourself. Doing this can make the fact that you don't have a filmer much less noticeable, especially when you insert it in between other shots of the camera being on the tripod. Now in this sequence, I was able to be both the subject of the video and the cameraman because I simply held it down to my feet as I was walking. But that simple shot inserted in between 2 tripod shots really helped distract from the fact that nobody was actually behind the camera. So whenever possible, get behind the camera and shoot the footage yourself. Alright, tip number 3 is a little bit more niche, a little more situational, but that is to use POV shots. POV or point of view shots are simply shots done from the perspective of you, the freerunner. You usually see these done with GoPros or other action cameras, but they can definitely be done with your phone, especially nowadays with those wide angle lenses that they have. Now, the reason why I say this is situational or niche is because depending on your style of freerunning, in my opinion, it will dictate how useful this is to you. For instance, my style of freerunning involves a lot of flips, a lot of spins, usually on smaller obstacles as well. And that doesn't always lend itself to POV shots because oftentimes the viewer is just not going to know what the heck's going on, and it's not a very satisfying angle, in my opinion, for those. Then again, if you've ever seen storer videos, then you know how successful POV can be in the parkour and freerunning world. It just depends on your style of freerunning. So if you focus on more of a strict parkour style of movements where it's focused on the obstacles and you're not doing a lot of flips and spins, you're focused on point A to B style parkour or freerunning, then POV can be incredibly useful. And the reason POV works so well is not just because the fact that it's from the perspective of the freerunner, but because it's from the perspective of the freerunner, it also means that the camera is moving. So you're the cameraman and the freerunner at the same time, and that really provides a lot of action and a lot of entertainment from the shots that you get. I mean, just look at parkour POV on YouTube and you will get a ton of extremely viral videos. So obviously it works. As you can see in this video, I did test out POV, but I just used it for the run-up of my wall flip because showing the whole thing just wouldn't really work in my opinion. But even just that split-second clip of me running up to the wall, I think adds a lot of action and liveliness to the overall video. Alright, and that brings us to tip number 4, which is to cut fast and often. So these previous tips were all focused around trying to make camera movement, whether that's faking it or doing it by yourself, but this tip is going to take a different approach to make your footage look more lively. One mistake I made all too often when I was first starting out was letting shots last longer than they should have. At first they seemed alright, but now looking back at the footage, even shots that lasted just a couple seconds longer feel like they take forever. Having a shot that lasts longer than it should oftentimes leaves the viewer feeling bored, especially when it's just sitting there on a tripod looking at the same thing. So cut down on the beginnings and end of your clips, don't let anything drag on longer than it needs to, and film your lines from more than one perspective. You can do this by either setting up 2 cameras in order to film the same line, or you can do what I do and just do the line twice and film it from different perspectives each time. Now, as freerunners, I understand that it's not always ideal to cut in the middle of your lines to a different perspective, as it can look like you're masking the integrity of the line. So I don't do this all the time, but depending on the line, I may or may not consider it. And that brings us to our 5th and final tip, which is to utilize unique angles and perspectives. I know it can be tempting to capture everything from a wide angle since you're more likely to get everything in frame, but occasionally a close-up of yourself being cut out of the frame a little bit can add a lot to your footage. But this tip doesn't just apply to how close or far away the camera is from you. You should also experiment with where you place the camera in relation to your subject. It's easy to place your camera on a tripod in the most convenient spot that's going to capture what it is you want to film, but if you think outside the box a little bit, you'll realize that there are a plethora of different angles and perspectives that you can capture your footage much more interestingly. I could have placed the camera right by the trampoline and captured this line just as well, but by placing the camera underneath the trampoline and on the second angle placing it inside the window in my house, I captured much more unique perspectives that I feel like added a lot to the footage. If you just take a little bit more time, a little bit more effort to think about where you place the camera, you can get much better looking footage. And when it comes to making videos, those little things add up over time, and that's what separates the good ones from the not so good ones. So there you have it. Those are my 5 solo freerunning filming tips to help you improve your videos. I really hope you found these tips useful, and I would love to know how you get on with using these tips in your own videos. If you would like to see more of this type of video, then leave a comment down below and maybe consider subscribing, because I do have more tutorials coming up in the near future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.